Imagine stepping into a hidden cavern where the walls glitter like a sky full of stars, except this is not some fanciful fairy tale. It's a real place in southeastern Australia, a sacred cave known to the Gunai people as Waribruk. Inside, on smooth walls coated with microscopic crystals, hundreds of finger grooves whisper of rituals performed by Mulla Mulung medicine men and women more than 8,000 years ago. Those ancient traces capture movements, gestures and beliefs about life force and healing, and they're unlike anything you've seen on a typical history channel. When the first researchers from Monash University followed Gunai elders into the deepest tunnel, they felt as if they'd stumbled upon a cosmic cathedral. Their torches revealed glimmering surfaces and rows of grooves etched across the rock. One archaeologist later said that the hair stood up on the back of his neck as he imagined those old hands moving deliberately through the darkness. What do those grooves mean? Why would someone crawl deep into a dark mountain to drag their fingers across a sparkling wall? In the next few minutes, we're going to uncover the story behind the Waribruk finger flutings, and you'll come away seeing rock art in a whole new light. The story begins in the foothills of the Victorian Alps near the Snowy River. Here, hidden behind thick forest and limestone outcrops, is a cave system that local Gunai elders call Waribruk. It isn't a tourist attraction, it's a place of reverence that lies beyond the reach of natural light. Over millions of years, underground, springs dissolved the limestone, creating a network of tunnels that wind deep into the mountain. Inside those tunnels, bacteria living on the rock produced microscopic crystals that twinkle when you shine a torch. The result is a cave that sparkles like it's dusted with stardust. And on those sparkling surfaces, you find narrow grooves, sometimes 3 to 5 millimeters across, arranged in clusters and panels. They're called finger flutings, and they are rare. While examples exist in caves in Europe and other parts of Australia, Waribruk has some of the best preserved sets. A team from the Gunai Land and Waters Aboriginal Corporation and Monash University documented more than 800 distinct grooves over an area of about 15 meters, some made while standing, others while crouching or crawling. These grooves date somewhere between 8,400 and 1,800 years ago, a span of about 400 generations. To put that into perspective, it's older than the pyramids and roughly contemporary with the last ice age. Yet each groove still looks fresh, as if someone just dragged their fingers through wet clay. This introduction lays out the scientific facts discovered by archaeologists and traditional owners. We'll delve into the geology of the cave, the cultural context of the Gunai people, and the spiritual beliefs of the Mulla Mulung who created the grooves. We'll also explore personal recollections from researchers who witnessed the cave for the first time, weaving their awe into our narrative so that you can almost feel the chill of the cave and smell the damp earth. This isn't just a history lesson, it's a journey into the heart of a living tradition. To appreciate the finger flutings, you first need to visualize the setting. Waribruk isn't an open grotto with sunlight streaming in. It is a hidden chamber buried deep within a limestone ridge. Over aeons, water seeped through the rock, dissolving passages and leaving behind a kind of spongy, malleable wall like soft clay. Later, bacteria colonized the moisture, secreting minuscule crystals that grew across the walls and ceiling. When a light source, a torch or a fire stick passes over them, the crystals glitter as if someone has thrown handfuls of diamond dust into the air. One Gunai elder recalled leading researchers into this chamber for the first time. He watched their jaws drop as the limestone walls shimmered back at them, their headlamps catching thousands of tiny reflections. The elder laughed softly and told them, "Now you know why this place is so powerful." That reaction isn't unique. Another archaeologist described the sensation of standing in Waribruk as walking under the Milky Way itself. The glitter isn't just beautiful, it's central to the cave's meaning. The microcrystals appear only in certain parts of the cave, and it's only on those glittering surfaces that the finger grooves appear. When you look closely, you notice the grooves hugging the glitter's boundaries. They rarely extend into dull rock. This relationship between sparkle and groove hints that the people who made the markings sought out the light-catching surfaces deliberately, almost as if they were tracing energy lines. The glittering surfaces provide more than a visual cue. Old stories collected by 19th century ethnographers say that Gunai-Kurnai medicine people used crystals and powdered minerals for healing and cursing. They believed that crystals held life force. By placing their fingers on the glitter, they weren't just leaving art. They were tapping into the energy of the crystals. The walls glistened like a starlit ocean, and those who entered felt as if they were swimming through a sea of light. A historian from Melbourne University once compared the effect to standing inside one of Yayoi Kusama's infinity rooms. Except this installation isn't man-made. It's a natural wonder. That analogy helps modern listeners grasp the intense sensory experience. You can imagine hearing water dripping in the darkness, feeling the cold limestone beneath your hand, and seeing glitter swirling around you. Your senses are heightened, your mind becomes receptive, and even a modern researcher can feel why this place was chosen as a portal for ritual. When thinking about human history, it's easy to compress thousands of years into a neat timeline. Bronze Age, Iron Age, Roman Empire. But the Gunai-Kurnai story unfolds across a span so vast that it dwarfs many of those milestones. Archaeologists date the earliest finger flutings in Waribruk to around 8,400 years ago and the latest to roughly 1,800 years ago. That means these grooves were made at a time when woolly mammoths still roamed parts of Europe, and they continued to be made through the rise and fall of ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. To put it another way, roughly 400 generations passed between the first and last grooves. Each groove you see today might represent someone who lived 90 generations before or after the next set of markings. A history teacher from Melbourne likes to illustrate this by lining up his students shoulder to shoulder and explaining that if each person represented 5 generations, the Waribruk finger flutings would stretch down the entire length of a football field. That gives young students an embodied sense of time. Gunai-Kurnai oral traditions say their people have lived in this country since the end of the last ice age. Genetic studies back them up, suggesting continuous occupation for tens of thousands of years. When the last great glaciers melted and sea levels rose, the Gunai-Kurnai were here, hunting, gathering, and weaving their stories into the landscape. Waribruk sits among the foothills of the Victorian Alps, a place of plenty and shelter. Its significance spans from the Pleistocene into the present. The continuity is important. While modern Australians often think of history as something locked in museums, the Gunai-Kurnai recognize Waribruk as a living site. Elders still visit, still tell stories, still teach younger generations about respect for place. In 2025, when the new study documenting the grooves was released, many younger community members joined the project. They helped record the panels using high-resolution photography, learning about both modern science and ancient customs. Told a journalist that he felt as if he was meeting his ancestors through their fingerprints. That sense of connection across time is at the heart of this topic. Waribruk isn't just old. It's evidence of a culture with unbroken threads running back towards the dawn of human settlement in Australia. At the core of the Waribruk story is the figure of the Mulla Mulung, a title that translates loosely to medicine person, but encompasses healer, seer, and custodian. According to Gunai-Kurnai tradition, Mulla Mulung were individuals endowed with knowledge of spiritual laws and practical remedies. They knew which plants healed wounds, which songs appeased spirits, and how to use crystals to focus energy. Their status was hereditary. Powers were handed down from parent to child, and if a Mulla Mulung misplaced their crystals, their potency was lost. The 19th century ethnographer Alfred Howitt recorded conversations with Gunai Kurnai elders who spoke of this secretive class. They described how crystals were kept in small bags, worn close to the body. When it was time to heal, curse, or initiate, the Mulla Mulung would retreat into caves like Waribruk. There, away from daily life, they could focus on the power contained in those glittering surfaces. The finger grooves are part of that ritual. Dragging 4 fingers across the crystal-coated wall wasn't just decoration. It was a deliberate gesture meant to harness the life force within the minerals. Some panels show finger marks as high as 2 meters up, which means the person was lifted or stood on a natural ledge. Others show narrow grooves only 3 millimeters wide, likely made by a small child, held aloft by an adult. This hints that the ritual involved training younger Mulla Mulung, passing down knowledge through embodied practice. A cultural heritage officer from the Gunai Kurnai Land and Waters Aboriginal Corporation compared the ritual to a pianist practicing scales. The physical repetition doesn't just create sound, it ingrains knowledge in muscles and memory. In the same way, running fingers along the glittering wall would have reinforced teachings about the power of crystals and the responsibility of the Mulla Mulung. There are no hearths, no food scraps, no mundane tools near the grooves. This wasn't an everyday meeting place. Everything points to a controlled, sacred environment. Visitors had to be invited, and only those with the right status could mark the walls. That exclusivity adds to the mystique. When modern researchers ask elders about the specifics of the ceremony, they often smile and change the subject. Some knowledge is meant to remain within the community, but the grooves themselves speak volumes. They show movement, touch, repetition, and a purpose beyond aesthetics. The grooves at Waribruk aren't random scratches. They form patterns and sequences that reveal how people moved through the cave. On one panel, researchers recorded 96 sets of grooves. The earliest run horizontally, multiple fingers dragged side by side, perhaps with both hands pressed together. Later, vertical and diagonal grooves were added, intersecting the earlier ones and creating a crosshatch texture. Among these are 2 slender sets of impressions, only 3 to 5 millimeters wide. Their spacing suggests they were made by a small child, yet the grooves sit high on the wall. To reach them, an adult must have lifted the child. This tiny detail conjures an image, a ceremony where an elder guides a youngster's hand to feel the glitter, passing on knowledge by touch. Deeper in the cave, a low ceiling panel bears 262 grooves above a narrow clay bench. People would have crawled along this ledge, sitting or balancing as they pressed their fingers overhead. The grooves point in the same direction, telling us that the participants moved toward the creek bed, their hands raised above their heads. Another section features 193 grooves tracing a path over the creek. Fingers were pressed into the soft ceiling, released, then pressed again 1.5 meters farther along as people walked forward. The fact that all impressions point the same way suggests an ordered procession. A pattern emerges. Horizontal grooves give way to vertical ones. Child's marks sit beside adult marks, and all are layered over time. These panels are like time-lapse photographs showing movement repeated over centuries. Modern researchers used high-resolution photography and 3D photogrammetry to record the grooves. They created models that can be rotated and studied on a computer, allowing them to measure depth, width, and orientation. In some places, the groove floors are smooth, as though many fingers followed the same path. In other spots, you can see individual ridges where a single person pressed into soft rock and left a distinct trail. That level of detail is what makes Waribruk so important. Finger flutings have been found in caves across Europe, but few are as well preserved or as systematically recorded as these. The data set here allows archaeologists to read the marks as physical traces of ritual rather than mere decoration. When you stand in front of a panel, you can run your own hand along the groove, with permission, feeling the exact path someone followed thousands of years ago. It's a direct tactile connection, a handshake across time. Scholars and community members alike caution against imposing outsider interpretations on Waribruk. At first glance, it's tempting to see the grooves as art, abstract lines on a canvas of stone. But the positioning of the grooves tells another story. They appear exclusively where the cave walls are coated with microcrystals, and they never occur in dull, non-glittering sections. There's no evidence of cooking, tool-making, or everyday living near the panels. Taken together, this suggests the grooves aren't doodles, but deliberate gestures. Gunai Kurnai oral traditions say that crystals hold life force and can heal or curse. By running their fingers through the glitter, the Mulla Mulung could be charging their crystals, connecting to ancestral powers or communicating with the spiritual world. One elder likened the grooves to pathways of energy, similar to song lines that crisscross the Australian landscape. Another explained to a group of university students that the finger flutings are like signatures, but not of individuals, of relationships. They mark the bond between people, place, and ancestors. Anthropologists also note that dragging fingers along soft rock is a highly embodied act. You feel the texture, you hear the sound, you watch the sparkle. In that moment, you're fully present. Your senses focused. Some believe this tactile engagement was a form of meditation, a way to enter an altered state. Others argue the grooves might symbolize journeys, with horizontal lines representing movement across country and vertical lines representing connections between earth and sky. The truth is, no one outside the community can say for sure, and that ambiguity is part of the appeal. The grooves leave room for wonder. They urge viewers to question their assumptions about art versus ritual, about knowledge that is shared versus knowledge that is protected. A Sydney art critic who visited the cave noted that the panels reminded her of minimalist paintings by Agnes Martin. But she quickly corrected herself. Those artists were making statements about composition. Waribruk's makers were engaging with something far older and deeper. By juxtaposing modern analogies with ancient practices, we can grasp the uniqueness of the site, but we also need to respect that some answers are held within the community and not ours to dissect. That's why many elders emphasize the action rather than the end result. It's the act of touching the glitter, of tracing the light that matters. The lines are evidence of the moment, not of an image. Recognizing this shifts our focus from what we see to what we feel, making the experience of the finger flutings personal and open-ended. For decades, the finger flutings of Waribruk were known only to the Gunai Kurnai and a handful of archaeologists. It wasn't until 2025 that a comprehensive study brought them to wider attention. This research was spearheaded by the Gunai Kurnai Land and Waters Aboriginal Corporation in partnership with Monash University and supported by international specialists from Spain, France, and New Zealand. Using high-resolution photography and 3D photogrammetry, they captured every groove, creating digital models that can be rotated, measured, and analyzed without disturbing the site. Over 50 feet of wall and ceiling were mapped, revealing more than 800 markings in the initial survey, and nearly 950 in total when deeper sections were included. Some grooves are barely a few millimeters deep. Others cut several centimeters into the rock, suggesting repeated contact over centuries. The team also sifted through sediment at the base of the walls. They found tiny fragments of charcoal and ash, likely embers from fire sticks dropped during the rituals. Those fragments were dated to between 8,400 and 1,800 years ago, providing the best estimate for when the grooves were made. By combining radiocarbon dating, sediment analysis and 3D modeling, the researchers were able to reconstruct how people moved through the cave. They could see where participants crouched on benches, where children were lifted, and how lines were added over time. Importantly, the project was driven by the Gunai Kurnai community. Elders guided scientists on where to go, when to stop, and how to behave. Younger community members were trained in digital recording techniques, ensuring that knowledge and skills stayed on country. This model of collaboration has become a benchmark for heritage research in Australia. It shows that cutting-edge technology can complement, not override, indigenous expertise. Beyond Waribruk, there are 39 known limestone caves in Australia with finger flutings, but none have been documented in such detail. The digital archive produced by this project will allow future generations to study the grooves without needing to enter the fragile cave. It also opens doors for new interpretations. Some scientists are now applying machine learning to the 3D models to detect patterns humans might miss. Others are comparing the Waribruk grooves with those in Europe and South America to look for global commonalities. All of this demonstrates how a site that predates the pyramids can still drive innovation and cross-cultural collaboration today. It shows that respecting elders' guidance while embracing modern tools leads to richer, more responsible storytelling. As our torchlight fades and we walk back towards daylight, it's hard not to feel humbled by what the finger flutings of Waribruk reveal. In one sense, they are simple marks made by human hands. In another, they are portals into a world where touch, light and crystal converge to connect people with their ancestors. We have seen how the glittering cave formed naturally, how ancient Gunai Kurnai Mula Mulung practiced rituals that involved dragging fingers along soft rock, and how modern researchers and traditional owners are working together to document and protect these fragile traces. The grooves remind us that history isn't just written in books. It's felt in stone, handed down through families, and encoded in rituals that defy easy translation. By listening to elders and respecting their wishes, we gain a deeper appreciation for what we don't yet know. The unanswered questions, why certain patterns were chosen, how the rituals evolved, leave space for wonder and respect. Next time you think of rock art as static imagery, remember Waribruk and the hands that moved across its glittering walls. If this journey into Waribruk sparked your curiosity, help spread the word. Like this video, subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into ancient mysteries, and share it with mates who love a good yarn about history and science. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below. What struck you most about the finger flutings? Have you ever visited a place that made you feel connected to people from long ago? Your insights help build a community of people who value learning and respect. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.